The riskiest position in all of football? The tight end position. So how do you find the riskiest of the riskiest? Well, today we're gonna do just that. Who were the riskiest of the riskiest position in football last season, and will they still be risky heading into 2024? Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? In today's video, we're going to be breaking down tight ends, and we're going to look at who the riskiest players were at the position last season and have things change for them heading into 2024, and then break down who we should be investing in at their current ADP. And this is a great time to remind everybody, not only is our draft guide for sale right now, but it's already accessible. All you got to do is head down to the description below, head on over to our website, and get yours ordered right now. $21.99, the best value in the fantasy football industry today. You're not going to find a better draft guide anywhere else for the price, and there is so much information in it, and tons of new content will continue to drop in it all the way up until week 1 of the regular season. Make sure you order yours right now so you can start preparing. All right, just a brief explanation on how this video works. What I have done is taken the top tight ends based on current 2024 ADP, and then I went back to last season and broke down all of their games. For every game a tight end finished as a top 6 tight end, they got 1 point towards their score. For every game a tight end finished anywhere between 7 and 12, they get 2 points for their score. And for any game that a tight end finished outside the top 12, they get 4 points for their score. We add up the total score at the end, we divide it by how many games they played, and that gives us our risk score. The lower the score, the less risky that tight end is. And honestly, there's really only a handful of tight ends that we're really trying to take a shot at right now to be our starter. There's a few guys that maybe like in deeper leagues we would take a look at, but for the general consensus, talking about a 12-team half PPR redraft league, these are really the only guys that you should feel comfortable trying to invest in right now. But what tight end had the most top 6 finishes last season? George Kittle is going to be at the top of that list. And George Kittle, every single year, just doesn't get enough love. I love George Kittle, and I have been telling people for years, hey, if you're looking for some of the highest upside in fantasy football at the tight end position, it's going to be George Kittle. And there are going to be some games where he may or may not disappear. That's just the way their offense works with how many weapons they have in it. But if you're looking for upside at the best ADP possible, it doesn't get any better than George Kittle, because he had one more top 6 game than the tight end going over 30 picks before him, Sam Laporta. And I love Sam Laporta, and he is my tight end 1 this season. If you told me, Kyle, you have to take Sam Laporta at his ADP, or you have to take George Kittle at his ADP, and you're going to get 17 healthy games from both of them, I'll take George Kittle every single time. David Njoku, TJ Hawkinson, and Cole Kmet all tied for 5 top 6 tight end weeks. Now, David Njoku, maybe not a ton of a shock there. He played very, very well last season. TJ Hawkinson, obviously, he didn't get hurt until much later in the year. But Cole Kmet, 5 top 6 performances last season. And this year, things are going to be a little bit different. He's not going to have his boy Justin Fields there. And he's going to have 2 other weapons around him that he's not had to deal with over the past few years. Targets may not be great for him this season. But someone that is destined to see more top 6 weeks in 2024 has to be Pat Freiermuth. After only seeing 1 top 6 finish in 11 games last season, hopefully Arthur Smith includes him in this year's game plan and he sees a lot more high-end finishes. Okay, who had the most finishes last year between tight end 7 and 12? A low-end tight end 1. Travis Kelce leads the top of the list. And yep, his ADP hurt you last season because you spent a first-round pick, maybe early second-round pick, on a guy that was barely inside the top 6 at his own position for quite some time. But Travis Kelce should see a big bounce back year, I believe. And yep, he didn't have a great ceiling last year, but he still had a really good floor. Had you drafted him 3 or 4 rounds later, you would have been just happy with the numbers he gave you. And seeing Evan Ingram at number 5 is no shock either, and we start looking through the rest of these numbers, the next set of numbers won't catch you off guard. Evan Ingram had virtually no ceiling last year. It was based completely off targets, catches, and yards, but he barely scored, and because of that, he he was barely reaching a top 6 finish every single week. It was enough at sometimes to get him inside the top 12, but not nearly enough to give him a high-end finish that a lot of people were desperate for. Kyle Pitts, with 2 low-end tight end 1 finishes last year, had 4 tight end 1 total finishes, and that number has to go up, right? Like, this season, having Kirk Cousins at the helm has to get Kyle Pitts moving towards that level of consistency more often, because we can't have 4 tight end 1 finishes in a season anymore from this guy. We need 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 to even start thinking about him not being one of the biggest busts of the last several years. Who finished outside the top 12 the most often? Kyle Pitts is right here, but it's also interesting to note Trey McBride is right behind him at 11 finishes outside the top 12. Remember, Trey McBride was virtually unused the first 5 weeks of the season, so it's not crazy to see the fact that he had 11 total finishes outside the top 12. Now, the reason I didn't go any deeper than just the top 12 finishes is because realistically, that's what we're looking for. You need the tight ends that are going to finish inside the top 12 the most often. The position has been so insufferable over the last few years that if you don't finish inside the top 12 tight ends any given week, you are virtually unusable anyway. Dalton Kincaid is probably very shocking for a lot of people. He was hyped up heavy last season. 10 games outside the top 12, and this is why you have to be very careful with rookie tight ends. For every Sam Laporta, for every Kyle Pitts a couple of years ago, for every Evan Ingram his rookie season with the New York Giants, there's 4 or 5 other tight ends every single season that as a rookie, they make no impact whatsoever on their offense. It is the most difficult position to translate from college football to the NFL level and be successful your first year. But look at the numbers. All the tight ends listed are finishing outside the top 12 quite consistently. Yeah, you take a look at a guy like Travis Kelce, only 4 finishes outside the top 12, didn't have the greatest ceiling last year, but was one of the safest tight ends. Take a look at Mark Andrews. Yeah, only 3 finishes outside the top 12, but he also had quite a few games that he was out with an injury. 7 to 12 games is the range for a tight end to finish outside the top 12 at his position. This right here shows just how volatile the tight end position is. And the better chance you have to be successful with the tight end in your lineup on a weekly basis is going to come from the fact that you have to find a guy that is going to give you the volume consistently. Hopefully they can score a few touchdowns and give you that high upside. But let's look for the guys with the best shot to finish inside the top 12 every week. All right, now it's time to take a look at overall score, and I guarantee you seeing Mark Andrews' name up at the very top with a score of 2.2 was not something that you were betting on before you started watching this video. Let's take a moment to dissect why Mark Andrews was the least riskiest tight end option last season. Now, it has nothing to do with the fact that he missed time. That's actually what makes him risky, is the fact that he deals with injuries maybe a little bit more often than most of the tight ends that we take a shot on every year. But Mark Andrews, when you draft him and you have him in your lineup, a majority of the time he's going to give you usable tight end numbers. Like last season, he only played in 10 games, but in 7 of those games, he finished as a top 12 tight end. 70% of the time last season, when you put Mark Andrews in your lineup, you got tight end 1 numbers. And that is something that is very hard to find. If you're skipping over Mark Andrews, you're skipping over him because you're concerned about him staying on the field. That's what makes him risky. Do not skip over Mark Andrews because you don't think he can produce, because he continues to produce every single year. Travis Kelce, next up on the list, no shock there, just talked about it. One of the safer bets last season, even though he didn't have the ceiling that he normally does. But my boy George Kittle finishing inside the A tier, absolutely love to see it. Keep banging that drum, telling people how inconsistent he is and how you don't want him on your fantasy team. That's going to keep his ADP low, and it's going to give us a really great value on draft day. Because you know what? The guy after him is probably going to be even more risky this season. David Njoku breakout season last year, but Deshaun Watson hates him for some reason or another. I don't know, because whenever he plays with Deshaun Watson, he doesn't even look his way. And now they've added Jerry Jeudy as well. I have some big concerns about whether or not David Njoku can keep up with that consistency from last year. Is it crazy that we start off the B tier with Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson at the very top? Probably a lot of you thought both of these guys would have been in the A tier, but nonetheless, they were very, very close to it, and not taking anything away from their performances last season. Unfortunately, they both had few performances outside the top 12 tight ends that just hurt their score. If they can just make those a little bit higher and just sneak into the top 12 next year, both should be in the A tier once again. But a lot of that depends on when TJ Hawkinson even gets healthy. Dalton Schultz is going to continue to be very risky because now you've added Stephon Diggs to the mix. That's not going to make an easy path to targets for Dalton Schultz. If you're picking Dalton Schultz, it's probably going to be in more of a best ball format, because from a redraft perspective, I don't know when you're going to be able to consistently put him in your lineup and get consistent numbers. Cole Kmet, another one that's going to be dealing with added weapons around him. Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze out of Washington are both going to take a lot of targets from Cole Kmet, and his boy Justin Fields isn't under center anymore. Evan Ingram finishes this far down on the list mostly because he just didn't turn in enough top tier performances. Had a lot of low tight end 1 weeks, had a lot of weeks just outside the top 12. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough to make him more consistent last season. Jake Ferguson should see a big jump this year, and the reason for that is because there's no way the Dallas Cowboys can misuse him for another season. He's going to have to be the number 2 target on this team this season, and if he's not, Dallas is doing a great disservice to fantasy owners and their own offense. Trey McBride, again, was hurt by those first few weeks of not even being used. I don't take a whole lot with these numbers here, and I would have liked to put together his numbers from week 6 till the rest of the season. That would have bumped him up into the yellow a little bit more, but unfortunately, he fell this far. But it does make you think, adding Marvin Harrison Jr., adding Zay Jones, does that mess with Trey McBride at all? Dallas Goedert at this point is one of the riskiest tight ends that we can invest in. Good offense, good quarterback, lots of weapons around him. That's why he doesn't see a consistent amount of targets. At one point, it looked like he was going to fill a Zach Ertz-like role for this Philadelphia Eagles offense. But they've drafted Devontae Smith since then. They traded for A.J. Brown, and both of those guys are the number 1 and number 2 in this offense. Plus, they're going to run it a lot more with Saquon Barkley. All right, the last 3 up in this video, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, and Pat Freiermuth. All 3 of these guys are in line to see more consistency this season. For Dalton Kincaid, really it stems from the fact they got rid of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Someone has to step up. Dalton Kincaid is a good shot to do that. Kyle Pitts, he's got Kirk Cousins and a little bit of a different offensive scheme this year that hopefully will utilize his talents way better. And then for Pat Freiermuth, he's going to be in an offense with an offensive coordinator that in the past has loved to look towards his tight ends. We'll keep our fingers crossed that he looks towards Pat Freiermuth as well. At least get us back to scoring touchdowns with Patty F. Even if he doesn't get the volume, hopefully we can see like 10 touchdowns. There you go, Headliner Nation. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this video breaking down the riskiest tight ends from last season. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe if you're new here, and turn on the bell notification. Anytime we go live, you'll know about it right away, and when our new content drops, you'll be one of the first to view it. For now though, Headliner Nation, I'm going to get out of here. YouTube's going to recommend a video to you that you may have missed. Make sure you check it out right now. Peace out, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.